Throughout history, tales of men transforming into wolves have persisted across civilizations, each culture weaving its own interpretation of the legend. The werewolf, a creature caught between man and beast, has been both feared and revered in different societies. But where did this legend originate? How did humanity first come to believe that man could take on the form of a wolf? To understand the origins of the werewolf myth, we must journey back thousands of years, exploring the myths and legends of Babylon, Greece, Rome, and the Norse sagas. These early narratives provide a glimpse into the human psyche, reflecting deep-seated fears, spiritual beliefs, and a fascination with the wild, untamed nature of the wolf. One of the earliest recorded references to a man transforming into a wolf appears in ancient Mesopotamian mythology. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest surviving works of literature, contains a story in which the goddess Ishtar transforms a shepherd into a wolf. This transformation is not a blessing, but a curse. He is forced to live as an outcast, shunned by his family and former companions. This early depiction of lycanthropy reflects a theme that would recur in later legends: transformation as divine punishment. The Mesopotamians, who were among the first civilizations to record their myths in writing, often associated shape-shifting with divine retribution. In their worldview, the gods wielded immense power, and punishment could take on supernatural forms. The transformation into a wolf was a fate reserved for those who had transgressed in some way, marking them as cursed beings. The wolf itself held a complex position in Mesopotamian culture. While wolves were feared predators that threatened livestock and human settlements, they were also admired for their strength and hunting prowess. This duality would continue in later werewolf legends. Perhaps the most famous werewolf myth from antiquity comes from Greek mythology, the tale of King Lycaon. According to Roman poet Ovid's Metamorphoses, Lycaon was a brutal and arrogant king who defied the gods. In an attempt to test Zeus, he served the gods a meal of human flesh. Zeus, horrified and enraged, punished Lycaon by transforming him into a wolf. The name Lycaon would later inspire the term lycanthropy, which refers to the supernatural ability or affliction of turning into a wolf. Lycaon's transformation stripped him of his royal status, his human identity, and his very ability to communicate, leaving him a cursed beast doomed to roam the wilderness. This theme of transformation as punishment for moral failings is echoed in many later werewolf tales. Greek and Roman writers recorded other instances of werewolf-like transformations. The historian Herodotus described the Nuri, a tribe from Scythia, who were believed to transform into wolves for several days each year. Petronius tells a chilling tale of a man who removes his clothes and turns into a wolf under the light of the moon, attacking livestock before fleeing into the night. These stories suggest that the concept of humans transforming into wolves was a widespread belief in the ancient world, possibly inspired by real-life warrior rituals or hallucinatory experiences. In Roman culture, werewolves were sometimes linked to witchcraft and dark magic. The Romans had their own fears of individuals who could manipulate nature, and werewolf legends became interwoven with broader superstitions about sorcery. The Roman poet Virgil mentions werewolves in his eclogues, describing men who could turn into wolves through the use of magical herbs and potions. While Greek and Roman mythology often depicted werewolves as cursed individuals, Norse mythology has a different take. Among the Vikings, there existed warriors known as Ulfhednar, a special class of berserkers who were said to don wolf pelts and fight with the ferocity of wild animals. Unlike the more common berserkers who were associated with bears, the Ulfherdna were believed to channel the spirit of the wolf, becoming nearly unstoppable in battle. These warriors were not considered cursed, but rather empowered by their transformation. In the saga of the Volsungs, the legendary hero Sigmund and his son Sinfjotli discover enchanted wolf pelts that allow them to transform into wolves. Though their transformation leads to violent consequences, the story reinforces the idea that humans could take on the attributes of wolves, either through magic or sheer will. The Ulfhednar represent a different aspect of the werewolf myth. Rather than being a punishment, the transformation was seen as a way to tap into the primal power of the wolf. These warriors fought in a trance-like state, immune to pain and fear, their howls striking terror into the hearts of their enemies. This echoes shamanistic traditions found in other cultures, where individuals would don animal skins and seek to embody the spirit of a creature in battle. The Norse belief in shape-shifting warriors likely influenced later werewolf myths in Scandinavia and Germany. The idea that a man could transform into a wolf, not through divine curse, but through his own volition, became a theme in werewolf lore. Beyond the well-documented Greek, Roman and Norse traditions, there are hints that shape-shifting beliefs existed in other ancient cultures. Some Egyptian myths refer to deities and spirits with wolf-like attributes, though these are not explicitly werewolf stories. Anubis, the jackal-headed god of the dead, is often linked to the concept of transformation between human and beast. In Asia, early Chinese folklore includes tales of humans transforming into animals, though wolves were not always the primary focus. Indigenous American traditions also contain legends of skinwalkers, shamans who could shift into animal form, including wolves. Though not identical to the European werewolf myth, these stories share common elements: transformation, supernatural power, and the blurring of the line between man and beast. For centuries, the werewolf was not just a creature of legend, but a terrifying reality for many in medieval and early modern Europe. The same way that witches were feared and persecuted, werewolves were also considered agents of darkness, accused of gruesome crimes and sentenced to brutal executions. The werewolf trials that gripped Europe from the 15th to the 18th centuries tell a chilling tale of paranoia, superstition, and the human need for a scapegoat for tragedy and suffering. These trials were not mere myths, they were well documented, often involving forced confessions, mass hysteria, and the horrifying execution of the accused. To understand the werewolf trials, we must first look at the social and religious atmosphere of the time. Europe, during the late medieval and early modern periods, was a landscape of fear and religious turmoil. Christianity, particularly Catholicism, was dominant, and anything outside of its dogma was often labelled heretical or demonic. During the 15th and 16th centuries, Europe was plagued by disease, famine, and war. Entire villages were wiped out by the Black Death, and harsh winters made food scarce. People sought explanations for their suffering, and in an age where science had not yet provided rational answers, the supernatural became the most acceptable solution. Witches were one of the primary targets of blame, and alongside them were the werewolves. Creatures accused of slaughtering livestock, attacking children, and engaging in acts of cannibalism. This was a time when belief in the devil was strong, and the church actively sought out signs of his influence. Werewolves, believed to be either cursed individuals or men who had made pacts with demonic forces, became a focal point for inquisitors and local magistrates. One of the most infamous werewolf trials occurred in Germany in 1589, when a man named Peter Stump was accused of being a werewolf. His case is one of the most detailed accounts we have of such trials, primarily because of the gruesome nature of his alleged crimes. According to the trial records, Stump, a farmer in the town of Bedburg, confessed under extreme torture that he had made a pact with the devil, who gave him a magical belt that allowed him to transform into a wolf. In this form, he was accused of murdering at least 16 people, including children and pregnant women. His confession included grotesque details, cannibalism, necrophilia, and an insatiable bloodlust. He even admitted to killing and devouring his own son. Stump's execution was equally brutal. He was placed on a breaking wheel, where his limbs were shattered before he was beheaded. His body was then burnt, and his head mounted on a pike as a warning to others. His mistress and daughter were also executed, accused of being accomplices to his crimes. While modern historians believe that Stump was likely an unfortunate scapegoat, his trial fueled further paranoia about werewolves, and similar cases emerged across Germany and France. In France, the region of Gévaudan in particular was terrorised by a series of attacks attributed to a monstrous wolf-like creature between 1764 and 1767. Known as the Beast of Gévaudan, this creature allegedly killed over 100 people, many of them women and children. While modern theories suggest that the beast was either a rogue wolf or a trained hunting animal, at the time many believed it to be the work of a werewolf. The case of Gilles Garnier, however, was more directly tied to the werewolf trials. Garnier, a reclusive hermit, was accused of attacking and eating children in the forest of Dole in 1573. Witnesses claimed to have seen him in a wolf form, preying upon his victims. After being captured and tortured, he confessed to making a pact with a demon, who granted him the ability to transform into a wolf. Like Peter Stump, Garnier was burned at the stake. What is notable about these cases is that unlike witch trials, which often targeted women, werewolf accusations were primarily aimed at men, particularly those who lived on the fringes of society. The accused were often solitary figures, hermits, beggars or outcasts who were already viewed with suspicion. Not all werewolves were accused of evil. In 1692, a man named Theseus stood trial in Livonia. His case is one of the most unusual werewolf trials in history because he did not deny being a werewolf. He openly admitted to it. However, Theseus insisted that he was not an agent of the devil, but rather a warrior of God. According to his testimony, he and other werewolves were part of an ancient brotherhood that fought against witches and demons. He claimed that they descended into hell 3 times a year to battle against malevolent forces, preventing them from harming the world of the living. Theseus's claims baffled the court. Unlike other accused werewolves, he did not confess to any murders or acts of cannibalism. He was eventually sentenced to flogging and exile, rather than execution. His case presents an interesting insight into how old pagan beliefs about shape-shifting warriors may have survived in isolated communities, even into the 17th century. The transition of the werewolf from medieval horror to literary fascination began in the 19th century, particularly in the age of Gothic literature. This period, which saw the rise of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and Bram Stoker's Dracula, also introduced the werewolf as a subject of fascination and terror. One of the earliest examples is Wagner the Werewolf in 1847 by George W. M. Reynolds. Unlike earlier myths where werewolves were simply beasts, this novel introduced the idea of a cursed man struggling with his dual nature. Wagner is granted youth and immortality, but at a terrible cost. He must transform into a wolf at night, a theme that would become central to modern werewolf narratives. Similarly, Clemens Hausmann's The Werewolf in 1896 presented the werewolf as a symbol of temptation and uncontrollable instincts. These early works helped lay the groundwork for the complex werewolf characters that would emerge in the 20th century. For centuries, the idea of the werewolf has been steeped in legend, folklore and horror. But behind the myths and transformations under the full moon, is there any truth to the werewolf legend? Could such a creature, or at least something resembling it, exist in reality? While modern science dismisses the idea of humans physically transforming into wolves, there are many theories that attempt to explain the origins of the werewolf myth. One of the most compelling arguments for the existence of werewolves comes from cryptozoology, the study of creatures whose existence is unproven. Across history, there have been accounts of humanoid wolf-like creatures spotted in various regions of the world. One of the most famous cases is the Beast of Bray Road, a cryptid reported in Wisconsin, USA. Witnesses describe seeing a large wolf-like creature walking upright with glowing eyes and a powerful build. Similar sightings have been recorded in parts of North America, including the Michigan Dogman, which has been a subject of folklore and local hysteria for over a century. In Europe, tales of the loup-garou in France and the werewolf in Germany mirror these North American accounts. Some researchers suggest that these sightings may be exaggerated encounters with wolves or large dogs, but others believe these could point to an undiscovered species. Could these accounts be linked to real unknown creatures? While mainstream science rejects these possibilities, cryptozoologists argue that many species once thought to be mythical, such as the gorilla, were eventually discovered. Could werewolves or a similar cryptid be hiding in the shadows? Another explanation for the werewolf legend comes from medicine and psychology. There is a rare psychiatric condition known as lycanthropy, in which individuals genuinely believe they are transforming into a wolf or other animal. This disorder, documented in medical literature, is associated with schizophrenia and other delusional disorders. One famous case involved a man in the 16th century who believed he was a wolf, behaving aggressively and attempting to hunt small animals. Modern medicine suggests that cases of lycanthropy might be linked to a neurological disorder that affects the brain's perception of self. Beyond psychological conditions, certain medical disorders may have influenced historical beliefs in werewolves. One such condition is hypertrichosis, sometimes called werewolf syndrome, which causes excessive hair growth all over the body. In medieval times, individuals with this condition may have been mistaken for werewolves and treated as outcasts. Another contributing factor could be rabies, a disease that spreads from animals to humans, often causing aggression, confusion, and hypersalivation. Symptoms that could resemble a transformation into a beast. Rabies outbreaks in past centuries may have fueled fears of werewolves, as infected individuals display violent and uncontrollable behaviour.